Call this meeting to order. Let's see here. We have 2 sets of minutes, but we don't have quorum yet, so we're going to hold off on approving the minutes until we get quorum. So I guess the next thing we'll do is we'll be hearing today from several folks on varying places within Minnesota's workforce development community. First, we have a presentation by Dr. Bruce Corey. So Dr. Corey, can you come on over to the testifier stand, and you are clear to give your presentation. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Dr. Bruce Corey, economist and cultural entrepreneur. I'm glad and honored to be here, but before I say something, I just wanted to tell you that last week I was here for this committee, and I witnessed something that brought me a lot of hope, and that was people with different views talking and engaging in very constructive ways, including the 3 branches of government. And America needs to see that more than often, because that's who we are as a people, and that's a country that we love. And so thank you very much for that. Today, I want to share with you some big ideas and around workforce development. And before that, a little bit of a background about myself. This head and heart are tied to these hands and feet. 1 foot of mine is in the world of academia, where I've been associated with academic programs in business, that also as an evaluator of programs in places from Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia to Coimbatore in India. I've also worked with young people and adults. And the other foot is in the world of the community, where on a day-to-day basis I hear from different people on different kinds of issues. For example, workforce related. Someone was trying to get a job, a young man, for many years. Because of his visa status, he could not get one. People were not willing to give him a chance. He finally located a job, and they called me as a reference, and I told them what I saw in him in the classroom and how he could deliver. And I said also something which I don't normally do. I said, I'm here. If you hire him, I'm here anytime you want me to work on any kind of situation that might happen with or an issue that we are trying to resolve. Let me know. And later that evening, the guy got the call for the job. So I'm working with different kinds of practical things. And then one of my hands is in the area of policy. That's here. And you've heard about the Corey Plaintiff Plan and redistricting and all these other areas. And then the other area is a practitioner. I led the Department of Planning and Economic Development for the city of St. Paul. I worked with a number of practical issues on a day-to-day basis. So those insights I bring to the table in the area of workforce. I'm aware that in this room, I find a lot of very experienced practitioners. So I speak with humility, but this is my experience of how I've engaged in the workforce and what kind of insights we have. So the big ideas that I want to communicate to you is, first, I use the word ALANA, African, Latino, Asian, and Native American workers. And I'm in this presentation including native-born and foreign-born. And they are the solution. The first big idea is they are the solution to our workforce, one solution to our workforce challenge. The second big idea is that we should view native-born and foreign-born people as Minnesotans. And all the different labels we add to them, when we get a dish from the table, in a restaurant, we don't know what's the status of that person, but we know when it's good food, and we have to focus on the good food. The other big idea that I want to bring to you today is that the need to connect this work talent pool with the high demand, high wages areas that the state needs, and especially when we now have, according to the state demographer, 1 million new people 65 years and older in Minnesota. And so where are those gaps in the workforce, and how do we fill those gaps? The next big idea is about how can we get these workers connected. And so these areas of connection, of capacity, that I'll talk to you about with some ideas. And then I want to, a very, very, very big idea that means a lot to me, and that is the need to value the ALANA worker. And what do you mean by value? it's tied to people who know me about my work on the economic contributions of the Alana people. And different people respond to that statistic differently. And the people who look like me, who I talk about, are experiencing something when they hear the numbers. And I want you to communicate that to you and say, why is that important? And why is it important to value the worker in the workplace, in the community, and every other place? And so finally, and the final big idea is a very, very deliberate focus on outcomes, because we've got to be intentional on where we are doing. So with that, let me begin by...
Dr. Corey, can I just have you pause real quick? We have quorum now, so I'd like to just take, first of all, I'd like to actually call the meeting to order. It is 8:37, let the minutes show. And we have two sets of minutes to approve today. First, from February 14th, Representative Baker. Would you like to approve the minutes from Valentine's Day?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I approve the minutes as presented.
Okay. Is there any additions or corrections? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion prevailed and is adopted. Next, we have minutes from our final meeting of 2023, which was March 31st. Representative Sensi-Mira, can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the minutes from March 31st, 2023.
Super. Any additions or corrections? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion approved and is adopted. Now, Dr. Corey, back to you.
Yeah, it helped me gather my thoughts, so thank you very much, Chair. The first big idea is that the worker shortage, Alana workers can address it, and these two pieces, data comes from the state demographer, the graph on the right, and then the Ron Worth of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis and a recent presentation to the Midway Chamber of Commerce, which I'm a board member of. So when you look on the chart with the green figure, you'll see what the state demographer estimates, that there's a net change of domestic workers of 7,600 annually, but there's a net change in new job openings of 163,000. So that's a huge gap that has to be met. So part of it is met with domestic immigration, and there is some of it that is being met by international immigration, but still that's not enough. And this is where we can find the very important role of Alana, African, Latino, Asian, and Native American workers. And as a side, I use a lot a model called IMPLAN, and this is used all over the world, nationally and locally, where you have a model of the economy and you simulate different questions, and it'll give you all the different interactions. So when you look at these numbers, don't look at it as rocket science, but as magnitude and size of impact. So when I ran the Alana workers through this model, it said that these workers help generate at least $200 billion of goods and services in Minnesota. They help generate about another 1 million jobs and about $24 billion in taxes. So they're very productive. And they can be still more productive, and what can we do to do that? And so the first big idea is that let's view all these workers, native and foreign-born, as Minnesotan. And so we need the talent. We need the talents of these workers because they are playing very important roles. Here are the top 5 sectors where Alana workers are. That is administrative support and waste management, healthcare and social assistance, accommodation and food services, manufacturing, and agriculture and forestry. And then there's a whole areas where the foreign-born are working. And nationally and locally, we are finding that the foreign-born are playing a niche area where we can't find those local native-born workers in different occupations. So they're already playing a very important role, and it's very important to pay attention to them for a very practical reason. And this chart comes out of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, and very interesting one that you can go and do various scenarios. So I took the scenario of foreign-born with incomes, that means top earners in the foreign-born. And if you compare their earnings relative to the rest of the country, and if I was a foreign-born worker, I'll be saying, shouldn't I be moving down towards the south and areas like North Carolina, where I get more income? And if I take for the 10% decile to the low-income workers, a very similar pattern emerges. So if we want to keep these workers here, we've got to treat them right and do the right things and also invest in their skills. So some strategies that can work is upskilling them to the jobs and opportunities. So we have that you passed last session, the Drive for Five, the Minnesota Forward, and all those areas. But when you look at where the Alana workers are formed, there's not so much of a quick match. So if you want people to move to those high-demand occupations, there has to be a deliberate strategy to document all of it. And the information is not very clear in where these programs are. There is some good information on the Uniform Report Card and some of it that's coming. But I came across a document that had 169 economic development programs, and some of them workforce programs in Minnesota. And even there is not a clear idea about how we are addressing some of these issues. So a very intentional strategy to focus on how we are getting people into these sectors, especially those sectors. There's a whole lot of sectors, and I shared with you last session, and I'll send that PowerPoint again, where the 55 plus are high and where Alana workers are in those sectors, and the need to start channeling people into those sectors, for example, utilities, because there's going to be a need for workers there. So we need career pathways that go into those areas. Then we've got to find ways that we reduce and remove barriers that come in the way for resources, skills, and opportunities to grow. And here's my experience of engaging like that gentleman that called me. It looks like at the core, that black dot out there, that's the world of the connected. The people who know someone who knows someone, that's where all the government departments are. They are in that area. Around them are, say, this world, the ecosystem of the nonprofits and their own client or customer boundaries to whom they serve. And they're connected to the connectors. And then after them would be people like me and you and others who try to connect people to these resources. But there's a whole lot of people that I come into on a daily basis in that blue area. They have no idea who DEED is. They have no idea which program is there. They don't even know how to apply. And so one of the suggestions that I think was mentioned last week, is there a number, a single number that someone can call that will guide them? When I was at the City of St. Paul and the Director of Planning and Economic Development, we were working on that one number concept. And so there would be someone with a manual that would connect people to the right area once you make that call. So we need to go into that area because that's where people have barriers, could be of language, they could have barriers of relationships, they could have barriers of understanding, and you need to address that. And how could you address that? From my experience, is the boots on the ground. You've got to go there, you got to connect with them, and you understand it as elected because you knock on so many doors and you know how the challenge of getting into those areas that you don't know anybody in there. And so how do we access that? I had a booth in the State Fair where I, last summer, where I wanted to showcase cultural themed businesses. And so I went around to cultural malls and Wilmer and St. Cloud and businesses, and I faced firsthand the challenges of that blue area that we talked about. Trying to communicate first an idea that you can come and showcase your products, and then also for them to actually have the time to talk to me about these ideas. And then part of it that you can access these people to is through trusted relationships, because there are certain areas they don't trust anybody who comes from outside there. And in one particular case, language accessibility, I was trying to communicate to this business entrepreneur, and she could understand but could not speak back in English, so she took out her Google Translate and was talking to me that way. So then I did my $1 million hotline. I called one of my friends who could speak Spanish, and he talked to her and explained the story. But that's the way we're going to get people into the door and to break this thing. The other thing is it's a highly diverse, and you know it. Each one is different. I got my PhD from the University of Notre Dame, stronghold of Irish Catholics, and so that's where I got my Irish accent. And now I'm working with in a German Lutheran institution with a different culture, right? And so you find as we go to different communities, we've got to understand how they receive information, how they view. My first comment when I was in my grad school going up to the counter, the registrar was saying, I don't know what's up with you. Your mouth is saying no, but your head is saying yes. So it's different ways of communicating. We got to also understand what does it mean to build capacity, because we always talk about capacity. And my experience, most recently, in the past few days, working with a nonprofit in central Minnesota who's applied for a Propel grant and talking about capacity building, I'd see there are 4 elements that we have to work on. One is the leadership area. The leader is dealing in an organization like a nonprofit is dealing with fundraising and development, with internal strategic planning and operations, and dealing with the board and dealing with the stakeholders. And that can need skills and training on best practice on how you manage that. There is the board that needs to understand that they are a governance board and not an operational board, and that there are best practices and oversight and training for them. Back office, having good accounts, and a lot of businesses, for instance, couldn't get COVID relief because they didn't have their back office in place, and HR systems, and then reporting and evaluating. There are things that are needed for that. And one of the, I call it the capacity paradox, is that we want organizations to execute, but we don't fund capacity to deliver, because we're assuming that they get the money and they can do it right away. But they have to build up systems to do it. And so we've got to figure out good estimates of what would it take to administer and carry out this kind of, and I tried once to estimate it looking at annual reports from different nonprofits to come up with some sense of that. We also have this information that goes out, and say I've sat on a couple of webinars, and when I went to these webinars for an RFP, I thought I would get a little bit more insight about how I could apply, but I could read the PowerPoint and not go to the webinar. So can we do something a little differently in how we communicate a learning model of what's the opportunity and what are some pitfalls? For example, as I said, I was working on another applicant for someone in the middle of the night, and I send them all this write-up, and I said, you better do that checklist, because I don't have time to go through the checklist. But a small organization, how many of them have the checklist? But one of the criteria of the grant is if you miss at least even one little document, you are disqualified. Now, that's going to put a lot of burden on a small organization. And so we've got to make all our RFPs friendly and things so that people can hear it. Then there is this very big idea I talked about of value Alana workers, and it's more deeper than just the respect. But when you talk about the Alana communities, all across the world, whether it's the US or whether it's India, whether there are different patterns of oppression from caste to class to religion, and all of them have very familiar mechanisms. You have to dehumanize the other person in order to make sure that you can ultimately maybe exterminate that person. And so that person has to be totally a thing or an animal, and you don't invest in any of that person as a being. And so that puts a lot of tremendous mental burden on both the receiver and the doer, and that has consequences. And so when I, as an economist, have a number that says the Alana people in Minnesota have an economic contribution of $1.4 trillion, that's almost big as the economy of Mexico. And if I have these numbers for the Hmong community or the Somali or the Mexican American, all of them feel affirmed from an academic point of view that someone is celebrating their value. And sometimes on social media, I would see this comment like, hey, we knew it all along that we were doing this, but now just the numbers have come out, right? So the denial of value is fundamental to racism. And so when you celebrate that value, you're also going to create this belonging, key elements of a workplace, investing in skills so that they have professional and career development, and invest in opportunities for career growth, mentorship, and you'll have a whole different dynamic in that organization as people now will go the extra mile in what we need. Similarly, when we talk, as I mentioned to you, about foreign bond workers, they have some additional kinds of things that we've got to be aware of, and that is accepting of foreign credentials. There was a PhD from a different country, and he came up to me looking for a job in academia, and I was teaching 2 classes, and I said, why don't you come in and have a guest lecture in my classes? So he had a guest lecture in my classes, and then I asked the students, gave them all evaluations and said, evaluate him. And so now he had a stack of evaluations from 2 classes of him in an American university talking to American students. Right now he is a tenured faculty member in one of the community colleges. So simple things can make a difference about credentials of competency-based. I was talking to someone in the Karen organization, how they're using high school competency credentials, the alternative model to get, or language accessibility in the workplace, and how we really need to, we can't do it so much in the state, but we really need immigration reform, guest workers, and all these other things that can make the economy function more smoothly. And finally, let's focus on outcomes, disaggregate the outcomes, because as I said, I looked at that document that had 169 economic development programs across the state, and some of them were paying attention to this, some of them were not, some were not existent. So how do we intentionally get this data, and how can we monitor not only point of time, but growth over time in these programs? So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to engage now or later. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Corey. Do we have any questions for Dr. Corey now? We can always hold off and wait till later. Okay. Next, thank you very much for your presentation today. I do have to say one thing. I want to point something out. I noticed that you intentionally did this, I believe, but on the third to last slide, when you mentioned value a lot of workers, at the top it says belonging. And I know that when I represent my communities, I look at their messaging about the communities that I represent want to be welcoming to folks, right? But belonging, I think, is more important. I really think that that's a word that means something totally different than welcoming. And I think that belonging means that there's buy-in in a community. And so I do appreciate that word when I see it. So I just want to point that out.
Thank you. You're right on, Chair.
Thank you. Oh, we do have a question. Representative Zeleznikar.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I think it's critical that everybody wants to be acknowledged, and so I think as we build our workforce for Minnesota, it's going to be there will be opportunities for skill sets, and even in northern Minnesota, where I've worked for the last 40 years, from being a nursing assistant, I was the minority. And then I worked with minorities and in creating opportunities to care for seniors and people with disabilities. It was communication and figuring out working together in ways and how we learn, and we could communicate. It was amazing to me. And so I've seen this happen, and I've worked with a diverse group of people in the goals. And so I think what you're saying is really critical, and I think we will find opportunities to do that for the entire state. Healthcare has a tremendous workforce shortage right now. And so I appreciate your information and look forward to, pathways forward for, staffing issues that are very real today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Chair. May I add one thing?
Go ahead.
So for 12 days, I was at the State Fair in this booth, the cultural destination booth, showing people, Representative was there, both of you, showing people about how to enjoy that cultural dish or that cultural gift. And I personally met about 1,500 people because I know that's the amount of business cards I gave out, and talked to them. And my discovery about Minnesota is that there are a lot of good people in Minnesota who want to do the right thing and relate at a human level. And I think that's this place to start anything. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have Sheila Olson, Chief Service and Program Officer for Goodwill Easter Seals, Minnesota. Come on down, state your name for the record, and go ahead and give us your presentation.
Actually, Julie Brecky is going to go first.
Fantastic. Okay, Julie Brecky, Executive Director of Hired. State your name for the record and begin.
Good morning, and my name is Julie Brecky. I'm the Executive Director at Hired, and I'm also the co-chair of Workwell Minnesota, a fully volunteer-based organization that I'm going to describe to you today. I'm happy that we have many representatives from this consortium group. I'm going to be giving a bit of an overview and some logistical things about how we interact with the state in kind of the grant-making process, but then you'll hear from workforce development nonprofits talking about the impact that funding from the state has had and is having. Actually, you'll hear some of the best practices that Dr. Corey mentioned in action when you hear from nonprofits today. So thank you for your time, Vice Chair Brand and members of the committee, and for inviting community or voice to come and share some impact stories. I want to share that over the past decade, several workforce development nonprofits have been coming together to connect and collaborate with one another. This informal and fully volunteer-run group was previously called the Minnesota Employment Services Consortium, MESC, and we're excited to share that after a strategic planning process and a rebranding process, as of last week, we launched a website called workwellminnesota.org, and that's our new name. We think that it conveys a positivity and a collaborative perspective as we're coming together to serve job seekers and bring economic prosperity to all. So a little bit more about Workwell. We're a group of 20-plus community-based organizations, many of whom are in the room today. So if you're a Workwell organization, please raise your hand. Yay, thank you for coming today. Together we bring workforce services to more than 30,000 Minnesotans across the state each year. Prioritizing job seekers, we choose to come together to shift systems for good, making powerful and positive change for people and Minnesota's workforce ecosystem. We seek to address Minnesota's significant workforce shortage that, again, Dr. Curry mentioned, as well as continued racial disparities through preparation of an often overlooked population of workers. Through skilling and upskilling workers, we prepare a new generation of individuals to meet current employer needs across the state. Workwell Minnesota knows that our collective voice is an important part of the workforce ecosystem. We do work for job seekers. Our collaboration bridges access to quality work and economic prosperity for often overlooked job seekers. We partner with local and state government, both MOB, which I see in the room over here, some of our colleagues there, as well as DEED, meeting regularly to talk about ways that we can improve systems and create more access for individuals. We also work with employers and funders. In your materials, you'll find Workwell's Minnesota's public policy priorities for the year. I do want to acknowledge also that we're a statewide organization and we have some people who traveled across the state to join us this morning. So after the testimony, please feel free to approach any of the Workwell Minnesota members if you have any questions about the organization or their unique individual organization's work. Before some of my colleagues share their stories, I did want to provide a bit of context about how nonprofits collaborate with the state to receive funding, implement programming, and how we're accountable in that process. So I'm going to go through something. This incorporates some points that we often get asked by legislators and others in the communities who just don't know kind of how the sausage is made. So we wanted to just give a really high overview of that. So after a funding opportunity is issued, we collaborate with employers and partners on a proposed program design that meets all the unique eligibility criteria of the RFP, often including target populations with unique barriers to employment. I will say that Dr. Corey again mentioned that these are pretty rigorous proposals that have really unique checklists and documentation, and it is an interesting thought as we look to bring more culturally based and emerging organizations into the fold for DEED funding, what that modification of that process could look like to include more access. But continuing on, then we submit a proposal, we await notification and begin a contracting process if awarded. In that process, we agree to quarterly financial and programmatic results that we're accountable for and that we report on. We begin implementing program and submit a monthly reimbursement request for allowed program expenses. This monthly reimbursement process continues for the duration of the contract. And one thing that we regularly get asked is how much money do you receive up front? This is a fee for performance-based kind of, well, not a fee, but it's a performance-based contract with only reimbursable dollars going forward. So once we begin serving people in the program, they too must meet certain eligibility criteria, and when they start to receive services, we enter all of their information into the state's workforce development database. There's a lot of information in Workforce One. We're regularly updating program activities, credentials earned, all interaction with each person that we interact with. That is our way of being accountable, and what we always say is if it's not in Workforce One, it didn't happen. So I just want to underscore that there's a treasure trove of data that's out there, accessible to you, DEED, all of us, in making sure that we know how the state's dollars are being invested. I also want to just highlight my last point is the state actually monitors progress of every contract that they fund. So we meet with monitors on looking at our ability to be compliant with what we've agreed to, both on the programmatic side as well as the financial side. And ultimately, we're reviewed to make sure that we're really complying with all the program implementation and impact promises we've made, upholding policies and practices that are effective practice and in statute, and ensuring financial fidelity for all allowable expenses. So just want to underscore that nonprofits are really accountable. We take our work really seriously, and we partner with the state in doing that through monitoring visits and otherwise. So again, this is not a comprehensive overview, but a quick one that I think addresses some common questions that we get asked. So again, there are several organizations here wanting to share more about the impact of the investment from the state. We'll start with Sheila Olson from Goodwill Easter Seals. Sheila?
Thank you, Ms. Brecky. Ms. Olson, go ahead and state your name for the testimony, and go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you. My name is Sheila Olson, and I'm the Chief Services and Programs Officer for Goodwill Easter Seals, Minnesota. And I want to thank you, Vice Chair Brand, and the members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today. As a leader in workforce for over 100 years, Goodwill Easter Seals, Minnesota provides customized programs to eliminate barriers to work and independence. Last year, we served more than 5,000 individuals throughout the region in career readiness programming. We serve Minnesotans with barriers to employment, including those who are new to the country, recently released from prison, transition age youth, individuals with disabilities, and those who are long-term unemployed. We believe that given adequate training, education, and supports, everyone can experience the power of work. The legislature's investment in workforce development last year is presenting exciting opportunities for nonprofit providers to better meet community employment and employer needs. As a longtime partner with the state of Minnesota, Goodwill Easter Seals is particularly excited about the expansion of our automotive skills, our automotive career training pathway. This year, with the support of a recent Pathways to Prosperities grant, with the support of strong partners like St. Paul College, DCTC, the Minnesota Transportation Center of Excellence, the Alliance of Automotive Service Providers, as well as public sector employers like cities of Shakopee, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Ramsey County, we will prepare students for transportation pathways in the public sector, including new certificates in training in electric vehicles, or EV. Our ongoing work with community partners and regional employers has also led to new opportunities to provide green construction certification for adults and youth in our training programs, and we look forward to bringing additional green economy training and employing opportunities to our participants in the future. State funding is critical to meet Minnesota's significant hiring challenges, and we appreciate DEED's partnership with us in this work. We believe that efforts can be streamlined for greater efficiencies and are working together with DEED's staff to make recommendations to reach these efficiencies. Ultimately, we all want time, energy, and resources to be spent on the job seeker. This is an investment we all can agree on. Thanks to this committee for your part in investing in Minnesota's workforce.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have Mary Niedermeyer, CEO of CAPI.
Good morning. My name is Mary Niedermeyer, and I'm the CEO of CAPI. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for having me.
Yeah.
CAPI was founded in 1982 as a center for Asians and Pacific Islanders to support the resettlement of Southeast Asian refugees of the Vietnam War. In 2008, we changed our name to CAPI to be more inclusive of all immigrant and refugee communities. Today, CAPI serves over 10,000 individuals annually at our headquarters in Brooklyn Center and our second office on Lake Street in Minneapolis. We seek to advance the social, economic, and political status of immigrants and refugees through our basic needs, economic empowerment, and civic engagement programming. CAPI has been receiving competitive workforce development grants from DEED for over 10 years. These grants have had an incredible impact on our ability to deliver services and our growth overall as an organization. When we received our first DEED grant, we were an established and trusted but very small organization. Since then, we have nearly quadrupled in size and expanded our economic empowerment department to serve over 800 individuals annually through job training and placement, work readiness, benefits access screening, financial coaching and workshops, home buying services, and free tax preparation. These state dollars that have been generously invested into CAPI have not only resulted in hundreds of employment credentials, jobs, and generational wealth for families, but also an expanding capacity of the nonprofit ecosystem at large. Over the years, CAPI has had the opportunity to support several small culturally specific organizations through subgranting partnerships, providing technical assistance, and as tenants in our building. Many of these organizations have now grown and are making an even bigger impact in the community, operating DEED grants and similar services themselves. This past grant round, we were very excited to be awarded the Southeast Asian Disparity Relief Grant, Bridge to Career Pathways Grant, and Individualized Training Pathways Grant. Next month, we will kick off the first grant by launching a certified nursing assistant cohort and also a green energy pathways cohort focused on the Southeast Asian community in the Brooklands. Although we were awarded a total of 3 grants, like other providers, we are still waiting for 2 of those grants to start because the contracts have not yet been executed. This has posed a challenge for us with our prior DEED grants ending in September 2023. We know that there are many factors that impact this delay, but we hope that we can work together to find a solution to address this issue. Thank you again for your partnership in making Minnesota the best place to live.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Jane Grotman, Executive Director of the International Institute of Minnesota.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Jane Grotman, the Executive Director of the International Institute in Minnesota, and just want to thank you all for the honor of testifying this morning. So as a member of Workwell, Minnesota, and a recipient of a direct appropriation in the last session and competitive funding from DEED, I want to shine light on how important this funding is in helping the new American community we serve and the many healthcare employers who are desperate for employees, as has already been stated. This funding has been critical to the Institute's medical careers pathway. The Institute served nearly 40% more clients last year than we did the previous, serving more than 4,500 new Americans, due largely to the increase of refugee arrivals and the continuation of the Ukrainian humanitarian parolee program. So the timing of the appropriation last year was critical for our work and responding to the communities that are coming through our door. The Medical Careers Pathway helps new Americans reach entry-level positions in healthcare, and importantly, helps them advance within that sector into higher-paying positions that stabilize their families. The Institute's Medical Careers Pathway has become a nationally recognized program, but just know that it's taken a lot of time and diligence and support from your committee and from DEED to reach this distinction. The pathway has trained and certified over 3,000 nursing assistants. Our certification rate is 92%, which is one, if not the highest in the state of Minnesota, which is a testimony to the commitment of our clients, our staff, and the training that we provide. The current nursing assistant hourly rate, we're happy to say, has been increasing pretty quickly in the last couple of years, and that rate is currently $20.50 per hour. With Institute support, we've helped 720 Pathway students advance in their careers, the majority of them earning their 4-year or 2-year RN degree, while others are becoming LPNs and other advanced positions in the medical field. So that's just very exciting to see. And the current average wage for a college degree RN is almost $43 per hour. So these impressive graduates are providing care in more than 137 hospitals and long-term care facilities in the metro state and outside of the metro, the surrounding areas. So this program has expanded over the years. As you know, we've been building this program with the support that we receive from the state. And in 2024, with additional funds from DEED, we will expand again, and our nursing assistant training will serve an additional 60 students per year with the funding that we received. The pathway has also leveraged private funds over the years to support the funding that we get from DEED. But DEED's funding is critical, as has been said, for the long-term stability of this program and the growth of the program. And DEED funding is irreplaceable. You've heard from many nonprofits, and you're going to hear from more. But it's just really important that the committee knows that there aren't other funds to support workforce training in the community. There's private funding that we all are accessing, but DEED's funding is really an anchor for these programs. The employer partners that we serve would be without a reliable source of qualified and quality workers, holding up, the healthcare sector in our community. So new Americans, as you've heard, are critical to the economic vitality and growth of our state economy. And the collective effort that is you, the Institute, and other nonprofits in our community provides a pathway to their economic integration and their career advancement, and for the long-term success of our clients and of the state's labor force. So thank you very much.
Thank you. The last of the Workwell member coalition is Alexander Collins, Career and Workforce Development Manager at North Point Health and Wellness Center. Come on down. And you may begin.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to be here this morning. My name is Alexander Collins. I am the Career and Workforce Development Manager at North Point. I come at this from a different perspective. I am what a workforce development program can do. I came to this country over 2 decades ago from Liberia as an immigrant. I met a man who said to me, what job would you like to do? I said, I would like to teach. He laughed at me. He said, first of all, you are black. Second, you have a funny, unique accent. Third, this is America. And I was willing to defy that. So I found a workforce organization, Twin Cities Rise. I went there, graduated, got placed in a professional job, bought my first home. And I came back and taught in that institution for over 15 years. Over the last 18 years of my life, I've been involved in workforce development, giving back. So in my role at North Point as the new manager for career and workforce development, there are a few things that are lacking. One, people walk through the door. North Point served over 86,000 visits at our medical center. Most of those individuals are unemployed. Some are laid off, dislocated worker, but we don't have the funding to help them. Right now, we basically do Project Launch, which is adjusted involved work. We do Career Pathway, which is funded by the county. So those who are laid off, who come to the food shelf or come to the hospital, we don't have means of serving them. So the Career and Workforce Development Services at North Point previously was funded by D, according to my predecessor. So we are interested in increasing opportunity from the state as we look at job seeker needs. That those located worker funding would be a great way to expand programming, as well as look at the opportunities that we have to work together. We appreciate the legislature's effort to provide opportunities to organizations of all sizes and commitment to serving the underserved and underemployed members of our community. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of this honor committee, for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. Workforce development is important, and I am a proof that it works. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the next group of presenters are here on behalf of Propel Nonprofits, and we're going to call up Garrett Bax. What's that? Oh, yeah. We actually, all three of them could come up at once. So we've got Garrett Bax, Naima Farah, and Neela Hebert. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
My name is Garrett Bacchus. I'm Senior Director of Advancement with Propel Nonprofits. I want to extend gratitude to Vice Chair Brand and Chair Zhang for inviting us here today to speak about the work of Propel in capacity building with nonprofits. We want to share a few things with you today. Appreciation for your support of infrastructure building in community-rooted nonprofits. This support makes a great impact. It helps organizations achieve stability and sustainability to better serve community. You will hear an update on the impact of the Nonprofit Infrastructure Grant Program, which was funded in the last session, as well as a testimony from a community nonprofit who has benefited from this program as a grantee. I want to say a little bit about the nonprofit sector here in Minnesota from an employment perspective. Nonprofit workers make up 14% of the workforce statewide. That's nearly 385,000 employees, and this is per figures from the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits' most recent nonprofit economy report. Additionally, nonprofits, they fill gaps in healthcare, human services, education, housing, community development, arts and culture, and more. They further the vibrancy and vitality of community. They're a partner to state agencies and philanthropy in carrying out the dedicated work of making life and community better for all. When these organizations are strengthened, the communities they serve benefit, and our state moves closer to reducing disparities. Propel Nonprofits serves nonprofits throughout Minnesota. We provide support and expertise in the areas of nonprofit finance, strategy, and governance. Propel is an intermediary organization providing these capacity building services and access to capital to support nonprofits in achieving their missions. We are a federally certified community development financial institution with a $40 million loan fund. Nonprofits use our loan capital to expand programs and services, bridge cash flow gaps, and purchase or renovate buildings. This capital is accompanied by our intensive technical assistance provided by Propel's financial specialists. Additionally, our capacity building services, they include a robust strategic services consulting practice, fiscal sponsorship program, accounting and financial guidance, training, online resources, and leadership coaching for nonprofit staff and board leaders across all fields of service and at any organizational life cycle stage. Our capacity building initiatives provide funding and relevant infrastructure to support Minnesota nonprofit organizations. They are built on the belief that self-determined, individualized capacity building activities coupled with cohort learning, relationship building, and this is a way to provide effective and efficient model for organizational growth. These initiatives are developed through our strong connections with community partners. Each initiative is designed to meet a specific need in community and to help nonprofit leaders build their knowledge, their skills, and their capacity to thrive in this connected ecosystem of well-resourced nonprofits. And that's our vision. I do want to extend gratitude to Work Well Minnesota as well for the work that they're doing, and to Dr. Corey for the wonderful tee-up and the appreciation of the work that Propel Nonprofits does. It's great to hear that nonprofits are getting our support, especially in Greater Minnesota. And now I would love to pass it to Naima Farah to talk more about the Nonprofit Infrastructure Grant Program that was funded in last session. Naima is our Capacity Building Director.
Good morning. You may proceed.
Good morning. Thank you, Vice Chair Brett and members of the committee. My name is Naima Farah. I'm the Capacity Building Director at Propel. And first, I want to start with some appreciation. Thank you, Representative Sansamura, for being our lead author on and supporting Bill 1080 during the last session in 2023. Thank you, Vice Chair Brett and other authors who also have co-signed on the bill in the last session. Representative Samantha Feng, Leslie Feng-Her, Foley, Becker, Finn, Tabek, and Hassan and Hussein. Propel received the appropriation from the state in 2017, 2019, 2021, and 2023 to create and sustain a nonprofit infrastructure grant program to build the capacity of small culturally specific nonprofits across the state. Today, I'm here to report that the nonprofit infrastructure grant program is working well. Small nonprofits face barriers in accessing and managing state grants, and apologies. Small nonprofits face barriers in accessing and managing grants with state agencies and need technical assistance to gain the knowledge and build the infrastructure and needed systems and policies. This program is pathway to that readiness, and we are committed to accountability for responsibly stewarding state dollars and to hold organizations to high standards for fiscally managing and reporting and holding organizations to high standards on those policies. They consistently meet these standards. A little bit about the nonprofit infrastructure grant program. After grantees had been informed, we developed a comprehensive fiscal guide, training workshops, one-on-one technical assistance with each grantees to build their infrastructure and fiscal policies. We continue to monitor the nonprofit infrastructure grantees. My bad. We will continue to monitor them through the grant program, as it is our responsibility of our grantees. We have staff dedicated to provide this intensive technical assistance for grantee nonprofits to develop their nonprofit infrastructure systems and policies. As you can see, and start over. There are 56 grantees organizations in this current grant program. Of those, 23% are based and serving Greater Minnesota communities. Please see the map in your handout. Most common fields of services include human services, community development, and education. As you can see on page 2 in your handout, since 2017, NIGP has prepared 70 small cultural organizations across the state to successfully accept and administer state agency, state funding, and other public funded grants, helping them developing financial and administrative systems to track their financial health, leverage funds to receive new revenue, and build new partnerships. Collectively, over 150 new jobs have been created as a direct result of this funding and support. We are excited about the growth of the program and the potential impact it will have in community. growing orgs infrastructure so they can be stronger and be more effective in years to come. We are honored to be stewarding these dollars and are grateful that the state recognizes the impact it has been made and the importance of investing in small culturally specific nonprofit organizations and communities they serve. One of the grantees organization is here with us today, Sweet Potato Comfort, and Naila Apar is here as the board treasurer and will share more about their experience with NIGP. Thank you.
Thank you, Naima.
Go ahead, you may start your presentation.
It is with an attitude of gratitude that I'm here before you today. So thank you so much, Vice Chair Brand and the committee, for your time, for this opportunity to really thank you for your support of Propel Nonprofits Infrastructure Grant Program. As a grantee in 2021 and this year, this program has been essential to the organization that I represent today, Sweet Potato Comfort Pie. Sweet Potato Comfort Pie is a Black-led arts and culture organization that cultivates the power of connection for racial healing and change. We do this through the arts, community building, events, conversations about race, and through the Black cultural tradition of sweet potato pie. And I want to tell you, a lot of people, a lot of funders, they don't get it, but Propel gets it. And that's what's been so unique about our relationship, is they have gotten us from day one. They understand that funding local, cultural, creative organizations, even if they're just starting out, is imperative to these difficult times in a state that is contending with a lot of trauma. They understand that putting the power of healing and uplifting the hands of these community organizations is the way forward. And I have to tell you, it's not an exaggeration when I say that without Propel, we would not be here. They believed in us when we were a new nonprofit, and they've been with us at every stage. And this isn't just about the funding, which we know is essential. It's about the relationship that they've provided. They've invested their time, energy, and we've received training, tools, expertise, and they've built a community with us that has helped us strengthen and become sustainable for long term. It's allowed us to build out our earned income service offering strategy, which will help to support our work, to implement financial systems and best practices, to improve our donor management systems, and to bring in additional grant writing and grant expertise. And I have to say, it's been phenomenal. Just the level of support, the level of connectivity. And so why does that matter? It matters because Sweet Potato Comfort Pie survived. And that with your help, you helped us survive by supporting Propel. And so to another extent, why does this matter? So I'm going to tell you a quick story that it's just not producing pies. Last summer, we produced a traveling play called Juneteenth, called Kumbaya, the Juneteenth Story. We performed this play in Rochester, St. Peter, St. Cloud, and St. Paul. And after the St. Cloud performance, we received a note from an African-American woman who expressed that she experienced a sense of belonging. And she had never felt this before in St. Cloud. Her words were, "This was the first time I felt at home in my new hometown." And for her, knowing that the city was hosting this play meant everything. And we realized we had provided a way for the city to extend a welcome, to affirm its commitment to inclusion, and to tell people their stories and their history matters. So to sum it up, again, the attitude of gratitude for Propel, for this legislative body, and for giving us the opportunity to extend this welcome, to tell our story, and create belonging, which will knit all of us together into a larger community. With appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentations.
Thank you.
Members, do you have any questions for the presenters today? Looks like Representative Ryer has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to thank both Working Well and Propel, and especially the organizations that you serve, all of who have presented here, and others, for your contribution to the community. You're really making a difference for Minnesota. I also, I spend a lot of time thinking about the mental health crisis that we're facing and the unique needs that people who are recovering from mental illness may be facing in terms of career path, in terms of healing and finding a way into a future that works for them. I'm very interested in teeing up a conversation about how well we're serving people with those types of needs, one of whom I've been myself, so I appreciate all the help that people get. And yeah, I would just like to see what are organizations doing, and more important maybe, what can we be doing, what else is needed to move forward in this, I think, underinvested channel.
Thanks for that question, Representative Ryer. Propel, the way that we can support this work and these organizations is by being a partner to nonprofits that are doing that work in community. So Propel itself does not provide the programs or services to care for those who are navigating mental health challenges and providing those supports. But what we can do is be there for the nonprofits that are doing that great work in community, providing the tools and resources that we have to make sure the core of their organization is strong, that they have a strong financial outlook and strategic outlook on their work, and that they can scale up their operations to do the greater amount of work that needs to be done in this area. Yeah.
Representative Ryer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. The question is then that comes to me is, do we as a state and through our programs enable that for programs and services targeted to the needs of people recovering from mental illness and recovering their mental health, to the types of programs that we've talked about that are targeted to new Americans and to others in the community. There's crossover, of course, there's intersectionality among all of that, but I just want to make sure that when we're thinking about mental health needs, that we are equipping DEED to say, this is a specific category of need that we want to be intentionally thinking about and not just have it as it happens.
Yes, I appreciate that. And that is something that Propel also, as a nonprofit partner in community, part of I think our responsibility is to elevate what we're hearing from community members as well, such as yourself and those that you represent, and elevating those to the partners that we work with, to philanthropy, to government agencies, to electeds, all of that. So yes, thank you.
Representative Baker, Lee Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank all the testifiers today. I think Mr. Collins had a very moving testimony today, too. Again, I'm embarrassed that he was ever thought he couldn't do something, like be a teacher. So congratulations on what you're doing today. Those are the stories that bring us here every single day. To really, Dr. Corey, Working Well Minnesota, to Propel, thank you for what you're doing. We heard today, again, sort of a kind of a continuing story, a little bit that makes us nervous about the areas that we're not getting the money out to that have been directly allocated. We're not there yet. My latest update is showing that 50% of the money from last year's work that we did here has been allocated, and 50% is not. That's over $260 million, folks. And our concern to that is, we need to evaluate and measure how we're doing with this before the next budget season. And that's going to be on top of us before we know it. And so we're having a hard time getting this out. Now, I'm not suggesting that, we push it through unnaturally, because DEED has to do their work. They have to check all the boxes off. They really do. I'm just nervous that as we get down to this finite amount of dollars coming in the future, I think, Representative Ryer, you really hit it on the head, because our mental health situation is really tied to this very closely. We heard testimony yesterday in Human Services. We have a real crisis, and there's no money to help people get out of ER rooms that have been in there for months at a time, and jails that should never be in a jail. They need to get mental health. So it's all tied together. Our work here and our intent last year was to invest. and we can't get it to you fast enough. And I understand there's a lot of things for that. Again, I'm not saying DEED is failing, but we wanted more out today than we have. And as we move forward, we just need to make sure that we look at all of these things. How do we measure these outcomes, these investments? We need to get people to work. There's a lot of justice-served areas and dislocated areas that we're into. So but you're here telling us why this is important. So that's why this is a moment to say thank you for being here, for all that you're doing. But we also need to make sure that we can stand up our systems better to get it out the door so that we can see how this is going to work. So thanks for being here.
Next on the list, we have Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, let me say, Representative Baker, thank you for saying that. I think we absolutely 1,000% agree. We made our largest investment that we've made in decades to organizations that are helping organizations such as the ones that have testified today. And thank you all for testifying. But we have to make sure once we've got those resources there that they actually get them. They need them to actually do the work. We know how important the work is. So thank you, Representative Baker, for saying that. I agree, and I'm looking forward to working on ways that we can maybe streamline some things to get that money out faster to the organizations that need them the most and that are working with those that need the help the most. So thank you all. And I just want to say, for sweet potato comfort pie, I've had a couple of those pies. And I will say, I grew up on my grandmother's pies, and so I'll never say, you know what I'll never say, but those pies are really good.
We won't tell Grandma.
And I'm hoping that we can get some pies to this committee someday so they can enjoy them as well. You send that note to Rose for me, please. But the work that you do is important. It is more than just about eating the pies. It's about bringing people together. It's about telling those stories. It's about people seeing themselves in those stories. I've also seen the Juneteenth play. It is very well written and very well performed. So thank you all for being here. Thank Propel for the work that you do. Thank you, Rep. Sensimora, for the work that you've done to get resources to Propel. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with you all to continue to serve Minnesotans. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
And I think, maybe to build upon the point that both representatives made just now, if members here today that are maybe have some ideas of how DEED could help streamline that process, we're here to listen. And so we'll take those ideas into consideration. I know Chair Zhang and I are happy to listen and to find ways, and I know that we'll work as a committee to work with the DEED. DEED's not here today, obviously, so just want to mention that. Next, and then also pie. Who can't say no to pie, right? Next we have Chair Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Corey, for your presentation. I always look forward having a conversation with you about the disparities and ways we can improve our current systems. I got elected 6 years ago, and one of the things that I still don't understand is our granting process. Our granting process is complicated. It is hard for folks who are not familiar with the systems, and there's too many barriers for folks to access dollars in this system. I want to thank all the organizations that are here today and the work that you're doing in the community. It's important. We know the work is important. That's why we invested in this work. So thank you for being here. Thank you for working with our community. And Rep. Frazier here beat me to the sweet potato pie story. When you were talking about it, I'm like, I could use a sweet potato pie right now. But thank you for your work. It is important. Stories are important, and food brings people together. Food is a universal language. Everybody loves food, and we need those stories. We need to remind people that we are all different, yet we all live in this great state of Minnesota, and we belong here, and we are visible, and we should be seen and heard and appreciated and valued. So thank you for your work. Thank you, Propel, for the work that you're doing. I came into this work thinking that we need, because all I hear is there is no capacity. You don't have capacity. Well, capacity is only not in monetary, value. These organizations that are doing the work and that are on the ground, that are the firefighters of our community, they do have capacity, but not in the sense of what we're measuring. So thank you for doing all the hand-holding, and I appreciate your work. And I appreciate the work of Chair Zhang and Vice Chair Brand for investing in our community and for believing that our communities do deserve the investment. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome. Representative Sensenbrenner, you're next.
Thank you. Thanks, Vice Chair Brand, and thanks to all the testifiers that have come here today to talk about your good work. I think my question is probably for someone in the Working Well Coalition. So a little bit building on Lead Baker's comments and Representative Ryer's comments, you know, when we think about all of the other challenges that we know our workers are facing, mental health challenges, housing crisis, you know, I guess, you know, something that's talked about in the housing space, right, is this housing first model, right? That before kind of dealing with anything else, you need to make sure that people have a place to live. I guess I'm wondering, from the experience of workforce development organizations, where does a job come in, right? Is it, and how does a job maybe create stability in other places of people's lives, right? So as we look to solve the other challenges that I think fall more to other committees, right, is there a way in which the job is kind of the solid foundation that you can then build out those other things? And have you seen that as an impact? And yeah, that's, I think, what.
Okay. Thank you. If anybody from the Work Well Coalition wants to come down and testify, please come down.
Thank you so much for that question. I'm probably not qualified to answer it completely. But what I can tell you is that many workforce development nonprofits are multi-service. And some organizations actually have chemical dependency, mental health, right in their kind of service delivery model. And many other organizations, like the one that I run, Hired, we're definitely working with people and assessing people's stability. And while we have housing navigators on site, we've got digital proficiency people there. We don't have mental health services on site. We build partnerships. And we actually build partnerships with organizations that are culturally specific to serve the people that we're working with. As we think about even just health and wellness, there's financial health and wellness. There's the mental health and the stability. I mean, we're working to remove barriers, and many different kinds of barriers for people as they're upskilling and preparing for work. And very often, mental health is often undiagnosed. Things that we're trying to figure out, something's not quite right, and we work with people and build that trusting relationship so that we can get there, and then you collaborate and refer to other organizations. That's how Hire does it. But again, there's a lot of different models because there are a lot of different nonprofit organizations that have different constitutions and expertise. I do think it's really an interesting question, though, as to whether certain services are an allowable expense with Indeed. If we start thinking about funding relationships or intentional relationships with mental health providers, and is that an allowable expense in a Indeed workforce development grant? I'm not sure I know the answer to that question because we usually end up working through partnership more often than paying for a copay or a service fee, or working with, again, like a free clinic of some sort. But I do think it's worthy of a follow-up conversation. I know we made a note to connect with you, Representative Ryer, and would certainly be willing to just have an ideation session about what does that look like? What could that look like? And I'm really happy that my colleague Jane Groutman has joined me here to add more information.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Representative Sensenbrenner, I just wanted to add the New American Community at the Institute. So to your question about working and housing stability, you know, when people come to the Institute, they're not all coming through refugee resettlement. So through that program, we are finding people, hundreds and hundreds of people a year, their first house, and their first job. And those things are happening at the same time often. And so what's really important is that we're helping people move into a higher paying job. And, you know, but one thing that's been great to see, and, you know, I know you are all reading about this, that wages have increased for entry-level workers. So I can't say how important that is. I mean, they're not enough, but they really have increased. So that helps a lot. But a big part of our work is then helping those folks get to the next level so they can make a job that pays $30 an hour or $25 an hour. Because that is what gives you housing stability, is an increase in your wages. And then having a two-income earner wage strategy in a household. It's not uncommon that we have two people doing a nursing assistant training program in a household, and then actually you can pay your rent if you have two people making $45,000 a year. It makes a really big difference. And then, of course, when you get to the nursing level. So that advancement part of our work is, I know, a focus of all of us. We haven't, I think early in this work, we didn't have the bandwidth to do that, but additional funding helps us do that. So that's really important in people's long-term stability. And I just wanted to add a comment about grants administration that a couple people had raised. And something that we know that other state funders do, other agencies, is they do provide 4-year grants or 5-year grants. And that certainly makes it better for us because we can predict our funding and our planning and our strategy around workforce development. I think it also really helps the agency because they're not having to get so much funding out the door every 2 years or every other year. So I think that would be something that would be, I think, really a win for both sides, for everybody. So just wanted to add that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
I guess I'll just say to the point I think that Ms. Brecky was making about, mental health services that could be offered in the workplace. I think that's a really interesting idea. I've actually heard about like hedge funds or startup companies that make that kind of part of their employee package. And I've thought like if we had that at the legislature, maybe everyone might be in a little better place if we had mental health on site. So I think that's something interesting for, I think any company or business to explore. And I think it's something interesting for our committee to talk about.
Thank you. Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Chair. And my question is probably to Propel. I was curious on the part when they were talking about the loan capital program, and if any of that capital loan program is being used for daycare. And I can't stress enough how we have a childcare issue in the state of Minnesota, and we've lost over 1,000 family childcare providers, and we have lost many centers, freestanding centers. And so across the state, and it doesn't matter, metro, greater Minnesota, rural, it's all critical. And if you don't have childcare, you can't accept the job. So while I agree with colleagues that housing is critical too, I'm very worried about our child care plan and making sure that we have pathways where there's choices for parents to find the best plan for their children and their family, and how that's different as we go across the state of what communities are looking for. So if you could speak, if any of that money is going towards child care, grant opportunities and loan programs for nonprofit or for-profit settings. Thank you.
Well, to your last point, we would not provide to for-profit settings because we exclusively work with nonprofits. So that would be, if it's a nonprofit child care center, we would certainly and absolutely help them and work with them on some loan capital. I don't have the numbers offhand on that subset of the sector of child care, but I can follow up with you with that. And I will say that we are aware of this issue, and this has actually been brought to us by partners based in Southwest Minnesota, Southwest and Western Minnesota, and I'm certain across the entire state, but that they are experiencing a great shortage. And so we're actively working on how do we get word out and how do we get people connected so that child care centers that are facing moments of crisis as far as cash flow and then achieving some semblance of stability and sustainability to serve their community members and their children, how do we help them out? So yes, absolutely.
Representative?
Thank you, Chair. And just one follow-up. Thank you very much. I would love that data. And when I went to Leo Augusta Child Care Center in southern Minnesota, it was interesting to see the models that people are looking at to address different issues, whether it's at Hormel and the diversity of the community and what different communities want, and co-op models where you different people can rent space to create a child care center. And so what will work in a manufacturing area for shift work and what would work for health, we have healthcare worker needs, and making sure that we have the ability to do this in our community in rural Minnesota and outstate and Minneapolis, St. Paul, I think is really critical. And those ideas, to the point of what Representative Ryer said on mental health and the issues of housing that we've talked about, I think are all critical. But I think our mental health increases when we don't have opportunities for where our children are going to be in a quality, safe setting, and having parents have that. So I hope you'll explore that and get me that data too, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Representative.
Chair Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to Representative Zalesnik, thank you for asking those questions. I just also wanted to point out tomorrow morning, Chair Hassan and Chair Pinto are having a joint committee hearing on this very issue, and so more than welcome to tune in and listen and what they will be doing to address the challenges.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, members, we will not have a committee meeting next week, but our next committee meeting will be on Wednesday, March 6th, at our normal time and place. Seeing that there's no other business, we are adjourned.